So today we're going to begin by reviewing the material in the Our Story series. So this will be applicable to the German, Italian, French, and Spanish titles. And we'll discuss the logic behind its organization. Then Gary will come on to discuss the basics behind comprehensible input and acquisition-driven instruction, as well as discuss and demo how to teach for acquisition using some of the materials that I will have gone over briefly in Our Story. Gary will also go over the basic 3-4 step approach to planning. And then that will take us to about 6 o'clock. At that point, we'll take a very quick break. So just to prepare for a very quick break. And then I'll come back on to review some questions that you can ask yourself before you begin planning. And then we'll look at a few sample weeks of planning, which you'll have access to after the webinar as well to look at. And finally, we'll break out into groups and collaborate a bit, coming back into the big group to discuss, maybe like once or twice. So there'll be, kind of movement between small groups and big groups for the last hour. And hopefully we'll have some time at the very end to just reflect a bit and plan for more planning if needed. So, understanding the materials in Our Story. Core to the unit, no matter what titles you have, and I just realized I updated everything to be more general to all languages, but I just realized I forgot this, Historieta and Historia Larga. That is in Spanish, but if you're in the Italian, German, or French, you'll see the same type of sections. It's short story and long story. So these sections are core to every unit. There's 4 of the short stories in the lower levels in every unit and 3 of the short stories in the higher levels. So, but they're longer in the higher levels. So each short story section includes a plethora of materials that allow you to introduce the target structures for that short section and interact with them with your students. So, use them and give examples and have discussions with censoring on those structures. For one, we have TPR gestures. We also have vocabulary slides in the lower levels, especially that are like fill in the blank sentences using those structures, just giving students opportunities to see the meaning and interact with those words. PQAs are personal questions and answers. These are scripts that are made into slides that you can project in class or simply print out and read from, but there are questions that are personal to get to know students, and it gives students sentence frames for answering them. So it's really good giving them the confidence to begin using those words. We also have special person interview scripts. These are a little bit different in every unit, and they can be used and incorporated into like a classroom routine where you choose a different student every day or a different student every week to interview. And those, can be really simple questions, and the higher levels you can get into more complicated questions. We also have class story scripts, which are like these sort of like silly stories usually that you tell with the students, and sometimes you'll allow the students to give details to kind of customize the story and make it interesting to them. Gary will be talking more about that today. And then of course we have the short stories themselves. Those are all written, usually they take place in one of the target countries for that unit, depending on the title you're in. They all have native speaker audio. They often have illustrations. You can use all of that in the teaching, like when you're teaching with them. And then after those short stories, there are comprehension activities and authentic tasks targeting the different modes of communication. And then sometimes you'll find alternative versions of the short stories as well. And those are, as a student of most of these languages, I love the alternative stories because it's like a familiar story told from a different perspective or with a new twist. And so it's, it's kind of easier to read, and you learn a little bit more about the characters or the setting. And then that's also where oftentimes new grammar concepts get introduced. So that's core, like that's a short story section, and they are very much if you're going to use Voces as a curriculum, the short story sections are really core to the units and should be done if you're going to do a unit. And then the Historia Larga sections are really can be used as assessment or review. They're longer stories pulling vocabulary from the previous short stories. They also have comprehension activities and authentic resources, and can be used like, kind of as more stuff to do if you need it. They can also be skipped if you so choose, but they're a wonderful resource to really give students just more opportunities to interact with those same structures. So supplementary to every unit, there's a lot to choose from. I've had many teachers email saying, it's so many things to get through. And sometimes it's because they're thinking that they have to cover everything in a unit. And I would say focus on those short story and long story sections, and then supplement those stories and activities, etc., with the supplementary materials. So here are a few of those. Just checking the time. So we have the country or region pages. These are like at the very beginning of the unit, and they the focus differs a little bit depending on the level and the language that you're teaching, but you'll see a lot of cultural material in these sections, and a lot of times it's focused on a specific country or region and like giving a map and some other guided activities with those. Some units have songs. This is a project that's really ongoing at VOCES, but we are developing songs eventually for every unit. And every song that we add, we create activities and some other materials to go along with it. So these can be just incorporated as, something that you, like a song that you listen to every Monday and you talk about, etc. We also have wonderful video series. Super Lapis or Super Crayon in French and Spanish 1 is a favorite. And he's actually working on videos for level 2 now, but he takes a while because they're so well done. But those are supplementary to any, they are an option as supplemental material in every chapter or every unit, and are very comprehensible, and within each episode, there's activities like pre-watching activities to do during the video, etc. We also have Profe Local videos in our Spanish titles all the way up to level 3. And then every title, no matter the language, has the extra section, which is a real kind of investigation on the nonfiction side of things, and includes authentic material or attempted authentic experiences for the students, like speaking in the world and photo section. We have panoramas, which are like mini field trips to different places in the German, Italian, Spanish, and French speaking world. Many titles have essential question discussion prompts to go dive deeper in the essential questions that are proposed at the beginning of each unit. And then higher levels might have movie talk. I think that's only in Nuestra Historia 3, but there are biographies in many of the different higher levels, no matter the language. Pechacucha presentations, like with these slides with different cultural items, and just a lot of other cool material, depending on your title. So I encourage you to look at that extra material and like find the stuff that your students resonate with the most and that you enjoy teaching, and supplement with those. And in addition to even that, in every unit, we also just have supplementary material within the titles themselves. So we often have a reader or two in every title. The readers are going to have activities, audio, and they're, just wonderful readers. We just added La Nouvelle Fille, or whatever, I can't say it well, by Jennifer Degenhart in Notre Dame 1. That was backed by popular request, actually. And we have just so many wonderful readers, and oftentimes more are being released. We also, in our Spanish, all of our Spanish titles have Go Viva a tu manera. We're working on adding 10 new episodes now. And then all of our titles have a cultural exploration section, which, just offers different resources on different sort of like popular culture topics, events, people, etc. And we try to update those continuously. And then there's also just really great materials in the appendix, which is another place that's kind of often overlooked. So look to those for more material, but also don't feel obligated to, of course, cover it. So with that understanding of the materials and just kind of, understanding how they work together in terms of, like what's core and what's supplementary. Gary DiBianca is going to be showing us how you can teach for acquisition using these materials. So as a short little intro, if you don't know, Gary's been with us, like presenting many times, but Gary is a Spanish teacher in Ohio. He is a world language coach, presenter, has developed curriculum, and he's really helped us a lot at Voces with our AP title, as well as updates to our other Spanish titles. Oh, and he has a wonderful section that we just added this summer on teaching for acquisition using Our Story in the introduction section of all the Our Story titles. So check it out when you have time. But now, Gary, I will stop sharing and you can share, right? Oh my gosh, yeah, thank you.
Excellent. All right, I'm getting myself all set up. Thank you, Erin, for that. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I will, once I open that screen, I will see those. All right, excellent. All right, I'm Gary DiBianca, as you just said, and I teach outside of the Cleveland area. For more information about me and my classroom, you could check out my blog at GaryDiBianca.com. I call it my mosaic of world language teaching because it's just like all of my ideas that kind of come together, and what's made me the teacher I am today, after teaching for 20 years. You can always follow me on Twitter or write something out if say something or share something with me on Twitter. Just like my blog, I don't write on Twitter as much as I need to, but one day I'll have time, and I'm hoping to get some time because I'm having a really great school year. I'm on week 4 now. So it's going really well. So I want to just talk about a bit of the things that I'm doing, because early on, everything I'm talking about today is what I am doing in my classes, both in my Spanish 2 class and my Spanish 4 class. So what is CI, or what is comprehensible input? So in general, teaching in the target language is most effective when what teachers are communicating to students is comprehended. If you're like me, you learned, all right, we need to be world language teachers and we need to speak in the target language. And then I tried to do that, and it's like, well, they're not understanding me. Nothing's going right. Everyone is confused. I had all of that early on because what I was failing to do was make it comprehensible and making sure they comprehend me. So everything we're talking about today is going to get us to make sure that they understand. Because if we ensure and assure to keep all input comprehensible for our students, students can then construct meaning based on the input I, as the teacher, provide them. So we have lots of acronyms going on. So we have ADI, and I just want to go through those. So ADI is acquisition-driven instruction, and CCLT is communication-based communicative language teaching. And both of these are the same. And what we, well, not what we, but when Voces came through and put the Our Story series together, it was with all of this on the screen in mind, right? They wanted to create a program that was TCI, or was teaching with comprehensible input. It incorporates some TPR, which we'll talk about, that is total physical response, and it's mainly gesturing and having students respond with an action. They've included TPRS, or teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling, PQA, which is personalized questions and answers. And all of this kind of can fall, if I look at a picture of the umbrella, comprehensible input can be all of these things. It could be TPRS, it could be songs, personal questions, could be games, conversations. As long as what we're doing is we keep it comprehensible for our students, all of this can happen with the goal of it all leading to language acquisition. I will say back in the early 80s, they also called the approach the natural approach. In essence, the natural approach, which leads to acquisition, it all becomes very similar. So what is the overarching goal, right? The overarching goal of an ADI lesson is to contextualize the language by engaging students with language that is memorable and personal. Now, I'm not going to say everything we do has to be memorable and personal, but I will say anytime we can do that, it's going to spark something in the mind, and it's going to make it much more easier to get when the students need it, if it is memorable and personal. The conversation or the story, however, is the vehicle, it's not the goal. So you're going to see us talking about stories today and saying, well, you can do this story from the series. You know, we want to be able to tell stories and we want to be able to get better at it. But I always say, you know, say the bell rings and I'm only halfway through a story, sometimes I don't finish it. So if I've given them enough of the language, which really is the goal, it's to give them the language and we provide enough comprehensible input so that the language output, which comes out of their mouths, occurs when students are ready. The most important objective for us as the teachers to provide some compelling, contextualized, repetitive, comprehensible input. And this all will aid in language acquisition. Now, for my friends out there teaching a early level, a level 1, or the beginning experience with novice students, we should not expect communication from them right away. In fact, I'd say I really hear the most like speaking and writing coming out of my level 1 students when I teach level 1, not until October or November. And that's just normal. So in this quick discussion, here is a lesson, and I will share these slides. Erin will share these slides out in an email tomorrow. This is a 3 to 4 step model for a lesson. One, and we're going to go through each one of these today. One, we have to establish meaning. So we have to pre-teach the language structures. And if you've already gone into the Our Story series, you're going to see that each story has language structures that it's the goal that students actually remember them and gets into their long-term memory. 2, we deliver our comprehensible input. And I'd say we have a goal of saying that 50 to 100 times, and it's really hard. So we're going to talk about strategies of how to say those that many times. As Erin just mentioned, there's a whole video series in all of your Our Stories in the introduction that has videos of me talking about how to do this in more detail than I'm going to be able to explain now in 50 minutes. Then we read, number 3. And then 4, when appropriate, we assure that that language is learned, that they understand the meaning. Sometimes they are producing. So I always say 1 through 3, it's a must do. And then 4, you know, when we're ready to assess, we assess. So how do we put all of this into practice using Our Story? Erin just went through all of the resources. And I'm telling you, you can do lots of the strategies that I talk about right now in the country sections, in the short stories, the long stories, and really any of the other aspects, you know, that I highlighted here. Because in the extra, you can still, one quick strategy we're going to talk about is asking questions. You can still ask questions with your students. We're going to delve into a Spanish 1, Unit 2, short story number 4. It is called The Dancer Without Shoes. And that's what I'm going to use today to anchor my talk. So when we do step 1 and establish meaning, the simplest thing to establish meaning is just write the English word. If the word is shoe, zapato, you write zapato on the board and write the word shoe, or you tell the kids it in English, or you hold up a shoe, like you hold up a prop. You could point to pictures, you can use gestures. So with gestures, like, and you're going to see this in a moment, that is TPR. But the students must understand those key structures. TPR, or total physical response, you're helping students make a kinesthetic connection And there's lots of brain research around this. This is why we want students to move, why we want students to engage in a meaningful, active way during our classes. Again, if you take a look at the video series, you'll find more with how to do this. But in this unit, we have the word dances, wants, and walks. And say and model, you know, and we could all do this right now. All right, let's all dance. If I say baila, I want you all to dance. And you have to buy into this. Thank you, Martha, right? Dance, baila. And I make my students do this. And I call them out. I say, hey, you, why are you not, you got to do this. Yeah, you have to do this. This is going to help you remember, I promise. And I always am actually talking to my students about acquisition. And then we do camina with our fingers. And then I do quiere. And I make them do this and I repeat this. And this is helping step one, establish meaning. But two, it's also getting more repetition of these words so students are hearing them more often. Then I do number two, or B, my next part, I kind of move into this. I say it and I don't model. I go quiere and I wait. And then I show them. Say two in a row. All right, quiere, and baila. And I wait for them to go. And then I do it. I then say, hey, let's close your eyes for me. And then they close their eyes. And then I do a check. How well are they doing? I could do 3 in a row and I could add details. You can start saying, walk with your fingers. Walk quickly. Walk slowly. And these are the details that I start to add. And that is producing real sentences that with correct syntax, and that's what they're hearing. Again, you must sell this and say it like you mean it and make it believable. Because if this is something that you don't like, then I will always tell you, you don't have to do this part. You just have to establish meaning. If you can't give it your all with it and actually like sell it, then they're not going to want to do it. If you're looking at our structures, this is the same box you'll see in our story text. These are the structures for this unit. And now I'm going to transition from that establishing meaning to step 2, which step 2 is building the context. One way is through questioning with personalized questions and answers. And in your platform, in Spanish, it's called preguntas personales. It's different in every language, but you would click there. Oh, actually, there's even a better one. Vocabulario importante, your like vocabulary. They have gone through and added all of these pictures for us, which is fantastic. So, you know, the sentence is right here. Ella baila con sus amigos en una clase de ejercicios aeróbicos. Great, it's there in English. I could start asking my students. This is in levels 1 and 2 in French and Spanish, and hopefully they'll get in some other places. But I could ask questions about this. You know, I make sure I say this, and then I say, oh, who dances in my class? Who dances with aerobics? Who dances salsa? I'm able to start talking to my students in a personal way to find out what they like. There's also the preguntas personales. I'm sorry, I jumped a little. And it's a slideshow. And it's a bit smaller here, but there's ways to zoom and make it bigger. So this was with the word wants. La clase quiere un examen. And it says si quiere or no quiere. So I will look at my class and I'm say, oh, clase. La clase quiere un examen. And maybe they don't understand examen, so I have to go write it on the board. You know, don't forget that cognates, what we think is really obvious, English and Spanish wise, or any language, it's not the same. Really, cognates are words that they can recognize in English, usually by seeing them. So if that's not on my board, they're not going to understand that. And then I look at them and I say, la clase quiere un examen? Si quiere or no quiere? And I make them respond. And if they give me a si, great, right? If they give me a C, or they go, and then I'll make a comment. La clase no quiere un examen. No quiere un examen. My goal, friends, is to say quiere as many times as I can. And I've already said quiere, I don't know, 6 or 7 times. And I keep going. La clase quiere una fiesta? Sí o no? Ah, la clase quiere. And then I'm talking to my students. And then to get more, I'll go, John, ¿quieres una fiesta? Tú, that means you. ¿Tú quieres? Sí, muy bien. And my next person, Sarah, ¿quieres? And I'm going to talk to as many kids as I can. And again, if kids start getting loud or doing things, my classroom management skills have to come into play here. But then I start moving on and I start asking different things, or I pick up random objects, and I have a classroom full of stuffed animals and full of fun things. So I can pick up anything. ¿Quieres? My office here is not as fun as my classroom. So that's a way of bringing questions, personal questions into your class. And again, Voces, the program, has done a lot of the work for us. It's already there. With this one, and again, sometimes, okay, and you'll see, and there's notes all throughout the book to tell us, or the platform. So on my wall, in my classroom right now, the wall on my wall is the word quiere, tiene, or wants, needs, has, is. Those words are on my wall. I have posters of those on my wall, because then I'm always going to be able to talk about them and point to the words, and the words are in English. So I can say, if I were talking about, in this context, some shoes, I would say, oh, ¿quieres? And I would point to want. Zapatos Nike, sí. ¿Quieres zapatos Healy? ¿Quieres zapatos Adidas? I would be able to do that. For my novice students, and so that you all know this, anytime you can use proper nouns, that's going to really help. Brand names, stores. I'm not going to talk about la tienda. I'm going to talk about Target, Walmart. And eventually, when they're ready, I'm going to add the word tienda. You're trying to make your language as comprehensible as possible. So anytime you can give them a proper noun that's still going to be grammatically correct in your language, go for it, because it's helping them understand. And then they get to talk about some real things that they can talk about. Don't ever forget what they can't talk about, right? There's plenty they cannot talk about. So when we're working through this, one strategy that we all use who do this kind of work, we use questions, and we ask a variety of questions. Now, going back to step 2, I just said you can ask personalized questions. We're giving you 2 other options and ideas here: story asking and storytelling. Well, what is the difference? Storytelling is just telling a story. So that's like if I were to read you the 3 bears. This goes really far. And of course, Voces, our story has done all the work for you with stories. You can print out the actual story or the story script, and there's story scripts almost in every text. So the story script, you can just read it and ask questions while you're doing it. We're going to see an example with that. And sometimes when you're ready, you have the students actually giving you some details for that story. In general, looking at the difference and how the platform was written, short and long stories, they're fiction and nonfiction. Sometimes they're not really super silly. Usually they have some good cultural content and messages. Story scripts are a little bit zanier, a little bit crazier. They can be modified, details can be added, and they can be bizarre. I get a lot of mileage with story scripts. So here's an example of a story script. It says there is a boy. The boy is very blank. Lots of options it gives you: handsome, tall, skinny. You can do any of them, and you can give those. So say I say, class, let's vote. Guapo, alto, delgado. And for my non-Spanish speakers, good looking, tall, skinny. And they all vote. All right. And then, so I'm going to take guapo. Good. And I'm going to talk about el chico se llama Daniel y le gusta bailar. If you see all the blue words here, those are options, but you don't have to do the options, and you can do as many as you want. So one that would be really easy to do is there's a concert. Let the kids decide a musical act. Find out what they like right now. They like way different music than I like. So that's a good way for me to bond with my students and find out that information. Now, storytelling, this is the actual story. And I put the English one here. Valentina is a girl and dances in San Jose, Costa Rica. Valentina wants to dance at the National Theater. So there's culture here. This, I'm not letting them like change the details. We're going to just story tell this or read, but I'm still going to ask questions about it. So why do I ask questions? Well, there's 4 different types of questions that I can think of in this training, or what we call circling. We could ask yes, no questions, either or questions, and then words with our questions with our question words. Why do we ask questions? Well, for comprehension checks and more and more and more repetition. For clarification, that's why we ask questions in real life. We're always clarifying something. We always are asking questions to get more information. Well, questions help critical thinking. And then questions also help us make connections amongst one another or with other things. So oftentimes when I talk with teachers and I show them a sentence and I say, ask a question about it, they ask this question. They go, why? So if it's, he wants shoes, the question that comes out of so many adults' mouths are, why does he want shoes? And my cat here is just like screaming, why? Because why is the hardest question in a language? Our students cannot answer the why question very well. They just don't have the language available, but they can answer yes or no questions. So I use this strategy, and not just me. This is used all throughout the CI world, or acquisition-driven instruction world, or TPRS world. We can ask questions with a yes answer, with the no answer, either or, and then the question word. And this is what this little box means. This is such an easy graphic for you to put in the back of your classroom, because our goal is to ask these variety of questions. And there's no pattern you have to follow with this, right? But you can ask questions about subjects, verbs, and objects. And so often we don't remember that you can ask questions about all of those. And hey, if there were adjectives, you could ask them about adjectives. If there were prepositions, you could ask words about prepositions. And this is going to help you provide more language that is comprehensible for your students. I just explained all that without showing you the slide, but hey. So if my sentence were, Gary wants orange shoes, I can say, oh, does Gary want shoes? Yes or no? Yes, Gary wants shoes. Hey, does Gary want orange shoes or does Gary want green shoes? Orange shoes, you're right. Yeah, hey, John, you're right. Orange shoes. Gary wants orange shoes. Gary does not want green shoes. I hope what you're hearing is I keep saying wants over and over. I repeat myself and I do something that says repeat the answer. I didn't just say, no. No, I said, no, Gary doesn't want green shoes. Gary wants orange shoes. You need to say these things so much. Hey, friends, you might get bored. I know. You're like, I can't say that word anymore. Take a sheet of paper out. Have your kids take a sheet of paper out and ask them what it means. collect it. If they don't all know what it means, they need to hear it more and more. So that means, unfortunately, we have to do that heavy lifting, and we have to use that language more in class, even though we kind of sound like parrots. It's okay, right? It's part of this. Here's a story script, and I would just ask questions with this as I'm going. So I'd say he dances. And Aaron, Aaron, I'm going to have you join me because I see Aaron. I only see a couple of you on camera. So Aaron, he dances many hours every day. Aaron, does he dance for 10, 20, or 24 hours?
20.
20. All right, everyone. Aaron says he dances for 20 hours every day. All right, then I would ask all my students, clase, él baila 10 o 20 horas cada día. Oh, 20, exacto, 20 horas. Él baila 20 horas. And, you know, you use your voice, you use your intonation, you go slow. It's all part of this, that you're training yourself, and you don't have to be as expressive, and people don't have to be as loud as I am right now. You can do this in a very calm way, but you're still asking questions and you're trying to bring your students in. So some questioning hints, use comments and rejoinders. And you're like, oh, Aaron, how interesting, right? Que interesante, right? And I train my students to do that too. I train my students. In fact, oh, this is not in the script, but today, so what I'm doing right now with my Spanish 2s, every day they come in and they pick up a card that has an expression on it. And they all have a different expression. And their goal in my 40 or my 50 minutes is to use that expression card when appropriate. So I had a kid yelling, how disgusting today in class. And I'm like, what we just said was not disgusting. So I then took it on me. And when I was building a story, I made something disgusting happen in class or in my story. And then my kid, he yelled out, how disgusting, in Spanish, everyone, right? He yelled out disgusting, and it was perfect. So I'm teaching them that language, and it's a part of my community. Okay. Physical feedback, like, yeah, like the nodding, I get closer to them. Fist bump, whatever, bump, nodding, repeating my sentences or parts of the sentence. Oh, yeah, 20 horas. Sí, mucho tiempo, no? All right. Pauses, using my voice, showing that I mean it, saying like I mean it, using my body, and enjoying the conversation, right? Because remember, if you're saying this over and over and you're acting like, okay, I'm an actor, I'm a teacher. I think all teachers are actors. And even if you all tell me you're not an actor, I believe you really are. Because, you know, you might have a terrible day and you have to act like it's all okay. Like we act every day. So enjoy it. Even if you're not enjoying it, enjoy it. Show them that you're enjoying it. All right. You also could then we're talking about dance, and my kid, I don't know, maybe they're going crazy or something. And then I start talking about them. Hey, who likes to dance? You like to dance. You dance. What do you like to dance? Ballet. Hey, everyone. Erin dances ballet. Oh, and then we talk about it. Does she dance? So, hey, do you dance ballet for 20 hours a day? And I'm making connections to that story that I was telling. So you can break into PQA at any time and talk about them. It's just a good strategy that you get better at doing. You want to remember to slow down. Even right now, I'm talking a bit too quickly. We want to slow down so our students are hearing each aspect of the language so they're able to process it. We must do some comprehension checks. Check that they're understanding. Hey, what does quiere mean? Show me quiere. And I have already pre-taught this gesture over and over. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to wait until you all do it. Okay, I use that all the time, right, with my kiddos. What did I just ask? How do you say blank in English? How do you say wants? And maybe some are starting to say quiere. All right, fill in the blank. Oops, sorry. Like fill in the blank. Like, oh, he wants to, or he wants to dance for how many hours, friends? And then they'll yell 20, right? Good, good, good. All right. Yep, we will be sharing the slides with you tomorrow in an email. All right. So how else do you stay comprehensible and comprehended in the target language? Slow down. I do this. I don't do this. My students do this when I'm going too fast. It takes training. Sometimes I talk really, really fast just to see who's going to do that. Then I also do this gesture. For me, they're all different. This, I do this, you hear it, I hear it, and I see it. And then that means they don't understand. And that's good. Train your students. So I need to do that so that my students, that's the develop an I do not understand gesture and a slow down gesture. Because then they're not comprehending. And then I have to work a little harder, right? Maybe I'm not pointing enough. Maybe I am not pointing and pausing to both the Spanish and the meaning, right? Or the picture. Maybe we want you to be, again, another strategy, be repetitive while varying your language. Develop the I do not do, say it like you mean it, teach to the eyes and assure they're getting it. It's really hard. Remember all of us teaching on Zoom for a year. I didn't get to look at your eyes, just like I don't get to look at you right now. But in my classroom, they have to look at me. I have to look in their eyes. And usually I know when there's confusion. You want to set your students up for success. You have to train them to play this game. You train them to be how you want them to be actively engaged. You need to try to stay in bounds. It's really easy for us as teachers to start talking about this and add this word and this word and this word. And this is a skill, and you will start to learn it. How to try to keep your story not from going in too many directions. Hey, here's my secret. And I've been doing this a long time. I print those story scripts, the same ones that you have, and I use them in class. You know why? It helps me not go in too many different directions. I can stay controlled and not go on this tangent and this tangent. It helps me a lot. So you can do the same. Everything I say is wonderful and amazing. A lot of people use this strategy. Like if I say it, it's true, right? And if it's in our story. Now, when I start asking students for some help, it might get rejected, right? So if Aaron said 20 and I didn't want it to be 20 and I wanted it to be 24, I had to say, oh, I'm sorry, Aaron, it's not 20, it's 24. And she needs to understand I have to build my culture that students know that your idea will not be accepted every day. I make all of my students respond to questions and I say, hey, I'm going to wait till everyone responds. I called a kid out today on it. I'm like, Noah, I'm waiting for you. I did. And guess what? Noah then said it. So, and I made the whole class say it together with Noah. Noah needs to know that I need him to participate. Keep control of your story if you want to. Most of us want to. You don't want kids to go in this direction, and this direction, and this direction. I try to keep the control. It helps me, right? And that's why I have that story script. Tell students your expectation for chaos level. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Right now, this is like a 5 in my chaos level, and I need this to be a 3 because that's the only level I can handle right now. So they need to know, again, you're setting the pulse of your classroom. And then when ready, have some actors and props, and we'll do that in a little bit. Okay. I'm moving on. We are now on reading. Reading is the 3rd step. Now, awesome that we have so much reading material. So here's the secret. So I used to have a textbook and I had to write all of my own stuff, write my own stories, because I've always believed in teaching this way since 2007. And then I started at a new school that didn't teach this way, but we were going to make it work. Then Nuestra Historia, then Our Story came along and I was able to buy it. And I was able to have all of this amazing material done for me. Oh my goodness. Thank goodness. Because now my students are so much stronger because I don't have to do it all on myself. I don't have time. I was teaching 3 preps for all of those years. I didn't have time. So reading, so important. If the kids are listening to us, they're acquiring language. Then for all of our students that are, they can read. So we need them to read the language, and that's going to help speed up their acquisition. So many options. We read the short story and then we read the long story. And as Aaron already mentioned, sometimes the long story, sometimes we do the long story for an assessment. You get to choose. All right. So I'm going to show you 4 or 5 strategies. This is the short story and it's in Spanish. Okay. Rosa Angelica es una mujer alta y delgada. I'm going to ask questions about that. We've already established these words. And if you know, like the Our Story Spanish 1, they've already learned the words alta and delgada. So I get to say, Rosa Angelica, sí o no, ¿es una mujer alta o es una mujer baja? Alta, ella es una mujer alta. Y ella es muy delgada. Hey, someone, what does delgada mean? Exactly. Muy bien. Tiene 25 años. ¿Ella tiene 24 o ella tiene 25 años? Ajá, muy bien. 25 años. Clase, ¿quién tiene 24? Señor Bianca? Qué lindo, qué bien. No, desafortunadamente. Unfortunately, guys, I'm not 24 anymore. But anyway, then we would go on. So I'm just asking questions, doing those same strategies. And again, you're going to check out the videos in the introduction section on how to ask a variety of questions. 2. Oh, here's just more reading ideas. And then I break them down. Help students visualize a story. We know when you read all the literature on reading that our students need to visualize. They need to paint a picture in their mind. How can you help them? Like, you can draw pictures. They can draw their own pictures. You can show them pictures. You can have them make sure that they're trying to build this in their mind. Ask questions about the text. Direct translation, right, for meaning. I start with some words and then I move to word chunks and sentences. This one gives some of the people look at me like, you really do this? I do, like every day. I know, but you know why I do it? It shows me that they understand. And I know that my students, especially my novice high Spanish 2 students, and let's be real, in a Spanish 2, there's like novice low and novice high and intermediate low all in one class. I know they get better at it because of that, because it's showing their comprehension. Direct translation for meaning. So stop motion is a group. I sometimes go like, all right, let's all stop here. Sometimes I do like, all right, let's go in a row. All right, you start, you read this, direct translation for meaning, and then you stop when you don't want to go anymore. I do that. There's just different activities and games. Awesome. In the material, you're going to check out Eric Richards has a great book in the introduction section that Aaron will let you know about that has tons of reading ideas. All right, pair reading. Volleyball or ping pong, like have them get together with a partner and read it together. Have students draw sections or draw it poorly. I show them how poorly I draw, okay, because I really do. And I want them to feel comfortable doing that poorly too. Use and coach actors and then make it a game. You can do true and false games, fill in the next word. Everyone has a dry erase board and write the next word, draw a quick picture on your dry erase board. Again, you're going to look at what Eric has done, and you're going to look at so many. You're just going to start looking at blogs, and there's so many ideas. Here's an example of my direct translation, because I'm really not lying to you. Rosa Angelica dice, clase, everyone, what is it? Says, Claro que no. Ooh, I've never taught that to you. Does anyone know that? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. See? Uh-huh. Good. Yeah. Of course. Of course not. Of course not. Son muy feos. Now I'll do a word chunk. I like just son muy feos instead of just the word son. So then I'll do that. Y mis zapatos, everyone. And then I'll do something called a pop-up grammar. And I'll say, hey, what does mis mean? And they're gonna be like, my. And they're like, yeah, it means my. And we add an S, mis, because zapatos ends in an S. And that's how I teach grammar, friends. Okay. El hombre dice, ooh, I'm gonna throw a question in, I know. El hombre o una mujer? Mujer o hombre? Mujer u hombre, u hombre. Ajá, hombre. Dice. So again, this is just how I would do a reading with them. Draw a section poorly. All right, let's read this paragraph together and I'll read it to them in Spanish. And now I want you to draw a quick picture. Ready, set, go. I can say, I could break this up. Sometimes I will take this in here. Okay, you went to secret. I just cut and paste these into my Google Slides, which I know you can cut and paste it from Voces. The kids can't cut and paste as much as we can, but we can, which is great. So all I would do is like here, not sure, my computer is tired with Zoom, but I would put a break here, and I would go around and tell each kid to do one sentence, draw it, maybe on a dry erase board. And then I'd say, okay, stand up now and put yourselves in order, right? Do a sequencing activity. And then I would read each sentence. So yeah, so there's just different strategies. And again, Eric's information has that. Coaching. All right, coaching students to be your actors. So I'd say, all right, el hombre de los zapatos feos camina hacia Rosa Angelica. Y él dice, Rosa Angelica, ¿quieres los zapatos? All right, I need two students. I need two actors. Come on up. And I have this student, and I have this student, and this student is going to be Rosa Angelica, and this student is going to be El Hombre. And I am going to say, all right, I'm going to say, hombre, this is what I want you to say. And I'm going to say in their ear. Now, there's a couple, sometimes I talk for them, especially if it's a student that, I don't know, maybe they don't say things correctly. Their pronunciation is not good. I say, all right, here we go. Rosa Angelica, ¿quieres los zapatos? And then I'd say, I run over to Rosa Angelica and I say, no. And then she'll say no. I'm like, go ahead and say it. Sometimes I whisper it in their ears, right? Okay, this is what I want you to say. No quiero tus zapatos. Go ahead, say it. No quiero tus zapatos. Y no quiero mis zapatos. Y no quiero. You're coaching them. So when you're coaching, and you can do this in a story script, and you can do this when we're reading a story, it doesn't matter when you do it. It's a fun strategy. It gets my students excited, and it's very interactive. So then what I also do is, but you have to remember, they're kids. They're going to do what they want to do. So you have to be the director. So I say, hey, I need you to stand right here. Then they come over and they stand here. I'm like, no. I said right here. They have to know that I'm still in control of how I am doing this. Again, that goes to that chaos level. Okay, that's using actors and stories. How do you set up your community, right? For some success for students, of course, right? Create a safe environment where students have a low affective filter, right? So that they feel comfortable making mistakes. I don't correct them a terrible amount. I don't say, no, you said quiere and it's yo quiero. Like, I'm not going to be mean to them about that, right? So you want to create this great environment that they can learn in. You want to talk to your students about acquisition and why you are teaching this way. In the introduction section of our story, there's a video there that talks all about acquisition. And there's a few of them. You can look at these online. It's great. I talk to my kids about acquisition all the time. I need them to know I'm trying to think what I did this year. Like I just said, you need to listen to Spanish, and they had to respond, so I can acquire. Like I do call and response in my class, and that was one of them. Do your students' grades reflect how much they try in your class? I will say, I really hope so. If my kids are trying, I want them to have a decent grade. I do. Yeah, because acquisition and proficiency doesn't happen at the same level for every kid. Let's be real. So I really want, if they're trying, that it's going to be represented in their grade. You set the class tone. What are your expectations? And demand them with care. And that's what I alluded to that a couple times today. Show students you care about them and their success. Make them have success. So I do a daily quiz most days. All right. And then I say, all right, write these down. I try to make sure that for at least half of the questions, like they're still on my wall or they're on my board, and that they're going to find success. And then if I see they're not having success and it's like right there, I have to talk with that student about, hey, what's going on that you're not really understanding how I'm trying to set you up for success. And I want them to know that. Okay. I'm still watching. There's been no questions, but please put some questions in there. Again, we've already talked about like 3 times today, and I didn't mean to say it 3 times today, but there's the how to teach for language acquisition using comprehensible input. That's in your introduction area or your teacher resources. And it goes through using gestures, personalized questions, using the story script, storytelling and reading, pop-up grammar, adding interpersonal speaking, like how I, in a story, make them turn to their partner and talk to each other, just a little bit. Asking multiple questions, and the multiple variables. I do this with my higher level kids a lot, my level 4s, comparing characters during and before and after a story, using gestures to preview a story, follow-up questions, cultural photographs, the poorly drawn pictures, using Google Maps and maps, using city maps, establishing meaning using content-based approach tied to a theme. Because this whole series was developed with AP in mind. It was developed with AP and IB, and using these essential questions to make these stories have more relevance in a bigger picture, in a bigger world. Remember, I'm so grateful to have the series that I do use. I sprinkle, Aaron was talking about sprinkling. I sprinkle a lot in a day when I'm teaching. And my favorite part of teaching is lesson planning. I love it. Unit planning and lesson planning. I know I'm weird, but so I bring in a new song, and I'm using authentic songs, and I'm using talking about our community, talking about our daily routines. I throw in technology, games like Gimkit and Quizlet Live. My students like that. And then I also try to play games that are very comprehensible input based, that are talking to my students in Spanish and getting them to do what I want them to do using that language. I want you to know that our series, it's there to help you, but it's just the beginning in our role as teachers and facilitators of acquisition. Because if we want our students to really communicate, you must provide them your input, which must be repetitive and comprehended by them in order to go into long-term memory. And I leave you with this. I got involved with understanding acquisition from this point of view and teaching this way because so often my students were forgetting, things were going into short-term memory. My very strong A+ students would get A's on all my vocabulary quizzes and they would forget it the next week. So I went to this strategy to really, really target more what I'm teaching with specific language structures that gets into long-term memory, building it through reading and storytelling, which is my preferred method, and PQA, which is just talking to your students, And then I started seeing language go into long-term memory, and it stayed with my students much longer than it ever had before. Okay, I see some questions. So here we go. Oh, someone hates lesson in unit planning. Oh, how do I do it? Yeah, I do. I love it. I don't know. I'm able to like think of that big picture, and I have lots of calendars all around, and I still have all my filing cabinets, and I go through the filing cabinets. And like today, I pulled out a song that I used in 2005, and I'm like, oh, this will work really great in Spanish 4. And I pulled it out today, and I, am gonna make it work because I had an idea. It tied to a structure that I had remembered. All right. I have several students in my class who refuse to do TPR or sing songs. Yeah, I don't think your kids are going to sing songs often. I make them listen to them. TPR, like, yeah, do it, friends. Like, I'll bring them out in the hall. There's no reason you can't do this. I'd have that discussion with them. Now, again, if they're on the spectrum or there's some other issue playing, we do have to understand that. But, and then again, now, are they being disruptive at the time? If they're not disruptive, then I might just let it go. But then if they're taking other kids with them, then I would definitely try to fix that early on. Do you have these students too? Yeah, so like Noah was one of them today, and I'm just going to keep pushing Noah. Mom's already reached out to me, and I would certainly reach out to her because I think she knows maybe how he's going to be. What do you do to encourage your participation? I'll leave on that note. I use a participation rubric, and I did it in 2007. I stopped using it. I brought it back out this year. I can't wait to blog about it. It's not my rubric. It is Bryce Hedstrom's. So if you check out, I love it. We're having a great year because of it. And I'm having a great teaching year because of the rubric that I have put in place. And I'm very clearly saying every single expectation I have in class. So, and that is encouraging their participation because they do want a decent grade for their participation. I'm happy to talk later on with anyone. Erin, it's to you. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gary. You just covered a lot very clearly in a very short period of time. So we're going to actually, I'm going to pause recording and we'll take a short break, be back here at 6:05. So it's very short. And I'm going to, I'm sure you all have this problem too, but I lose things like crazy on my computer. Okay. So, in a moment, we're going to try these breakout rooms. And so don't, we're not going to do that just yet, but, I just want you to see like the idea that we're having, but we had over 100 people registered, and I understand it's Thursday on a school week. And a lot of people emailed me saying that they couldn't make it and they're going to watch the recording. So there are 28 people here. So I'm going to see if we can maybe split into like the first 4 rooms, or we'll just kind of play it by ear. So sort of start thinking about which room you might want to go in. And of course, I know a lot of you, I think Alex, like you were saying, you teach levels 1 through 4 plus some. So, if that's the case, just choose whatever one you want. Level 1 is probably going to be the biggest group. So if you want a smaller group, maybe just choose a higher level, but that's for the breakout room in a moment. So we're going to kind of transition to taking all the great insights and examples that Gary just presented and applying it to planning a week. And that's a little arbitrary. So I'm not, I don't want anyone to have like the expectation that they're going to plan out this whole semester tonight, but this will hopefully get you thinking how you could do that. So I was saying at the very beginning, before a lot of you got here, that I know from talking to teachers all week long, and all month long, that a lot of you are not really planning because you're just really busy, because you're new to VOCES and you're kind of doing it day by day. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of reflection and a little bit more insight into like how you can string these resources in our story together over the course of a week, and then those weeks over the course, months, etc. So when you're planning, which we will be doing in breakout rooms in a moment, keep in mind the 3-4 step model. You know, and we kind of, I won't, but like establishing meaning, using the target structures and context, reading with the students, and then extension or assessing. So just keeping that in mind as you're planning a week. Maybe you don't get to all 4 parts in that week, but and then you can plan any week. You're going to get a template. It's going to be 1 week, and you can kind of adjust the timing to suit your needs. But you could like imagine yourself planning next week, perhaps, or maybe the first week of the next unit that you have coming, since maybe this has already, like maybe you're in the midst of a unit right now and you can't really think beyond tomorrow. Or maybe just see what your colleagues are going to be doing, or, you know, the group members, and just use their ideas. This can be experimental. It doesn't have to be exactly what you'll really do, but it's a draft. And so let's just kind of like put something on paper. Keep in mind about like, and share with your group members what you do outside of our story, and include that in your planning, you know, if you want, because maybe there's something like really awesome that you do every Friday, or really awesome that you do at the very beginning of class. We give some examples, which I'll go over in a moment, but I know that you all have, you know, years and years combined experience doing this and doing things that work. So please share those and keep those in your planning. And of course, yeah, share with each other, ask questions of each other, and we'll come back and reflect, and we'll kind of play this by ear. So also to note, we do have pacing guides in Voces, like in all of our titles, pretty much. We have like 2 versions in French and Spanish, Our Story. They're in the teachers panel under resources, as well as in the Voces library if you're not logged in. But we're not really referring to those today, but they are good sources of information, you know, of like kind of seeing how things can be planned out. There's so many different ways to plan the materials out. So, okay, so let's look at a sample week of pacing. And actually, before I'm just going to share this. Actually, what I'll do is I'll share this. You'll get all these documents eventually, but I'm going to share this in chat in case you want to start. And I'm sorry, I wasn't looking at chat, and now I see. Okay. So if you want to follow along, I'm just going to generally look at a few sample weeks of planning. Then when you're ready, and you can do this sooner or later, you can if you click on a make a copy link, there's a version 1 and a version 2. So version 1 shows 50-minute class periods for 5 days, kind of like a standard schedule. And version 2 is a mixed schedule. It's 4 days with 50-minute classes, and then like 1 90-minute class. And I think it's only 4 days for the week. So, but once you make a copy of your link, you can edit it however you want, right? It's your copy. And you can type in it, and it's, you know, all that. So if you want to start doing that now, you can. But and again, you'll have access to this, but just to look over some of what we've kind of put together here. Opening every day, every class period, with, you know, something of a routine. You know, we suggest like calendar talk, special person interviews, which we have the scripts for in every unit. You could just ask like one student a few questions, and then moving on to like the next item on your schedule. You could look at the unit's country focus pages. You could look at the map there, ask questions about it. You know, there's slideshows in the early levels, but something to, you know, break the ice to get students positioning their mind in language class, right? Then you can introduce some TPR structures. If you've already introduced some like the week prior, then maybe you just review some old structures, but keeping it short. So if you do have those students who aren't cooperating, right, it's just like a few minutes of them not cooperating, and then you can go on to the next task. You can, taking those same structures, begin asking questions, like doing the PQAs with them. So we're getting, I mean, so the students are experiencing these structures in different ways. Some of them are going to respond better to the TPR. Some are going to really love the PQAs, but they're all centering around the same structures. Then, you know, and again, this is just an example. I won't go through every day of like this, but then, you know, we recommend, and I think you all would agree, to break it up a little bit with a song, whether it's a song from the unit or one that you find on YouTube, or a cultural video, depending on what title you have. We have some like cultural investigation videos. But again, YouTube is a great source for them as well, or just a brain break. If you do a Google search, you can find so many great brain breaks, which is somehow a tongue twister for me right now. And then, you know, you might start building the context for the story that you'll read the next day. You know, maybe using the story script, like the class story, or asking questions related to structures or contexts that you know are coming up in that story the next day. And then an exit ticket, and I know, or like a quiz, like sort of like a quiz question maybe for the day, depending on your style, a quick write. There are printable exit tickets and all the Our Story titles, I believe. And then you can even create your own in the title. I mean, this is like a kind of a lot to get used to if you're new to the editor, but I made a video, which is linked here, showing you how you can actually create exit tickets in Voces, assign them, and then you can keep them all there. So that's kind of one of our days in a nutshell. And it's very similar, you know, it's just kind of like you're moving in like deeper into the unit, and day 2, you know, maybe telling the stories. These times are estimates, of course, but I would say, and you know, and again, you guys can chime in here and I'd be interested to hear, but I feel like over planning is usually better. As long as, you know, you're not depending on getting through everything in that day. So having though like movement and changing from one task to another keeps students, you know, from getting too bogged down, or from becoming too like presentational and not interactive. And then someone asked, direct message, is New History Story the same, Martha? And I'm not sure what, but if you want to clarify that, I will answer that. So yeah, so these are some 50-minute days. And then in the longer days, you know, it's really just a matter of breaking it up more, getting in those brain breaks in between. If I scroll down to like the 90-minute, doing some, if you have the comprehension activities, once you've read a story with your students, a great thing to keep in mind is that those comprehension activities, I mean, they can be done as homework, they can be done independently, but they very much can be done in class as a class as well. And I've talked to many teachers who have gotten Our Story and are new to CI and kind of see that because it's online as a homework only type of thing or an independent activity. And I think it's so key to the student success and your own to, you know, use some of those questions as an in-class experience. So you can basically use them as opportunities to talk about the story more. Okay, so I'm getting, so that's some sample week of pacing that you can refer to. And then we have some questions to answer before planning the week. So you don't have to answer all of them, and we're going to take a moment in a second and go into the breakout rooms to begin answering them. But what story will be your focus? You know, what is your goal with, you know, where are you looking at in the curriculum, of course? Like, is it Unit 1, Historieta 1, or is it maybe Unit 2, Historieta 3? Are there can-dos? Each short story, well, the long stories usually have the can-dos, but are there essential questions in the unit that you want to draw, like discuss as they relate to the stories? What structures need to be taught? Look at those stories and see if there are additional structures that you need to pre-teach that aren't any of the target structures, since we are all, of course, you know, we tried to keep this very comprehensible, of course, but there are always some structures that might slip in there that you just need to pre-teach. What extras do you want to consider? Maybe there's a relevant holiday that you want to, you know, celebrate a little bit later in the week. Maybe you want to keep like videos as like a Friday thing. So you just need to plan around that and make sure that there's a video playing on Fridays. And just other kind of routines that you want to keep going.